Y vamos a conversar con nuestra invitada. Apenas si puedo esperar. Ustedes van a ver la cantidad de información tan interesante que ella trae para nosotros. We are going to welcome our guest tonight. It's Priscilla María Page. She is an assistant professor of theater and dramaturg at UMass. She is involved in the production of this play coming up, and let us welcome Priscilla. Priscilla, buenas noches. ¿Cómo estás? Bienvenida.
Gracias, Raquel. Gracias for having me here. I'm going to speak Spanglish un poquito.
That's fine. That's great. That's fine.
I'm really happy to be here and to talk to you tonight about this really exciting project, play titled Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido. It's written by my friend and colleague, Elisa Gonzales, who is teaching at UMass as well. And we're just really excited that it's coming up.
Very good. Tell us a little bit about this play. There are a couple of things that I have to ask you just from the name. The name of the play is, let's see, Olvidados, which is a Spanish word that means forgotten. So it goes Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido, which means that it involves music also. So we can explain all this a little bit. Let's talk about Olvidados, forgotten. What is that about?
So this play is inspired by Elisa's family story and specifically her great-grandparents. And they came to the United States from Mexico. They were actually encouraged to come, and her great-grandfather worked on the railroads. And eventually her great-grandmother worked in a sardine cannery. And their story is one story of many, many people's stories that after the Great Depression, that Mexican laborers and Mexican Americans were targeted, they were scapegoated, and they were blamed for the Depression, they were blamed for the jobs that weren't there, and so they were repatriated. But this is a story that most people don't know, and so Elisa wants people to remember, to never forget what happened in these repatriation drives of the 1930s. And so she's telling her family's story, but she's also telling us about American history, about U.S. history, and specifically how Mexicans and Mexican Americans were treated.
Mm-hmm. And I am assuming that this is not being taught in the schools, right? Do you know anything about that?
Well, I know that like most U.S. history, especially where it concerns people of color, especially where it concerns, if we think about indigenous genocide, if we think about the enslavement of African people, if we think about Japanese internment camps, and if we think about specifically lots of different parts of Latin American history, but specifically about Mexican and Mexican American history, that people don't want to acknowledge the atrocities that are happening at the U.S. borders today. People don't want us to teach about what this particular repatriation drive, what this was like, or what other types of deportations or what other kinds of atrocities that have happened and been enacted upon Mexican and Mexican American people. So Elisa actually has told me that she started to write this play in 2016 when Donald Trump had become president, and that she was very upset, very troubled by the anti-Mexican sentiment that was rising up again with all of his talk about building a wall and really all of the atrocities that have been occurring at the border.
So all these topics are covered in the play?
In the play, she's speaking specifically about her family story, and she has this really beautiful gift of being able to tell us one particular story that's deeply personal. It's actually very moving. There are some tragic elements. There are some heartening and triumphant elements, but it's really her family story. And her goal or her mission is that by telling this story, it opens up the conversation for us to think about the U.S. and Mexico, the treatment of Mexican and Mexican Americans throughout history, but also to reflect on what's happening today. And she talks about, in the story, in the play, she also tells what her life was like as a child growing up in Southern California and how she was teased by school children for being Mexican and called names for the types of food that she ate or for different cultural practices that she was teased by white classmates. And so that part is in the play as well.
That brings me to mind a comment that I heard once about this, not only about the critical race theory, but the fact that we should include in the school texts the real story. And I remember the person telling the interviewer that wasn't a good idea because it made the kids uncomfortable. And the interviewer had a very good answer. He said, "You worry about the kids learning about these atrocities, being uncomfortable. Have you ever put yourself in the shoes of the victims and try to feel how they felt back then?" For example, the little girl, the first little Afro-American girl that went to school where she had to be guarded by security police and all that. Can you imagine the terror, the feeling that this little girl had? I mean, and how brave she was. And I guess, you know, the other person just had nothing to say, but he brought a very good point, you know. There's no comparison in the sadness and terror that one child feels as opposed to the other as a victim. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and I absolutely agree. And it does, it causes harm to everybody if we don't know what these stories are. And certainly people who have suffered, people who have endured, and also people who have succeeded. Like, we need to know what the different moments of challenge have been in our family histories. And we need to know the full story. And that's my feeling. And I absolutely agree with you that, and there are leading scholars in terms of education who know how to bring up difficult topics in age-appropriate ways. And I just wish that the people who are against teaching critical race theory, if they would maybe be more open and also understand that it's the intention to just paint a more accurate and more honest picture, and that's going to help everyone.
Mi invitada en la noche de hoy es Priscilla María Page. Ella es asistente profesora de teatro y dramaturga también en la Universidad de Massachusetts. We're speaking with Priscilla María Page, assistant professor of theater and dramaturg at UMass, and she is an active participant in the production of this play coming up at UMass, Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido. And just as a point of curiosity, did Elisa Gonzalez's family, when they were repatriated to Mexico, did they come back? Did any one of them return, or what happened to them?
Yes, eventually they did come back. So her, and this is another important point in the play, and I think we're going to share in a little while music by Pedro J. Gonzalez. This moment is particularly important, the 1930s, and because these were what were called repatriation drives, and so the government was really they weren't necessarily deporting people. They weren't legally deporting people, but rather they were coercing and forcing people to leave. But they sort of tried to paint it as a nicer picture, as if it wasn't deportation. So it actually caused a rift in her great-grandparents' marriage, where her great-grandmother Paula was ready to leave and wanted to leave with their 3 children. And her great-grandfather Jose stayed because he wanted to continue to work, and he really believed, that they had made their life in San Pedro in Southern California. And so Paula, with the 3 children, left, and it was quite a difficult journey to go back to En Medio, Mexico, and in Jalisco, and ultimately their youngest child, he passed away. I think really the trip back, he died shortly after they made it back to their home in Mexico. So then her great-grandfather went searching to find his family and then to bring them back. So eventually they did come back, and then Elisa is Mexican American. So she grew up in San Pedro, which is near Long Beach in Southern California. So there are obviously lots more twists and turns in the family story, but the family did end up coming back. But it was at a deep cost to her family members.
Exactly. And I wonder what happened to the people that owned property. Let's say they own houses or land, farm. I wonder what happened to them. Do we have any idea if they were compensated for that or no?
So the government did give some money and paid for one-way train tickets to repatriate, but people really did leave everything behind. And there are actual, as a dramaturg, I do research, so there are photographs of people at train stations showing up with many, many suitcases, with as many layers of clothes as they could put on. If they had family pets, they weren't allowed to bring their pets. Many of them had very little to begin with, and many of them were working in the service industry type of jobs. They were working in factories. Many of them were working on farms. And so this was already a marginalized population in terms of their socioeconomic status. And then they were really, I would say the most accurate word is that they were coerced into leaving. And so in the play, Elisa describes a scene where she sees people with families, she sees people with their young children. They've packed as much food as they could carry, but it's a very long trip, and people are running out of food. People have very little, and they're making their way back across the border with actually very little support. And in the play also, Pedro J. Gonzalez, he was on the radio. He actually had a morning show, and he had a band, and they were called Las Madrugadores, and so those are the early risers, or the ones who get up early. Yeah. And his radio program was on at 5 a.m., and he knew that many workers were listening to him. And he was a very vocal advocate, telling people not to leave. They had the right to stay. And very quickly, he became a target of Anglo authorities and people who were upset that he was trying to tell the truth about what the workers could really do. So he's also an inspiration for Elisa, because she writes most of the songs, not all of them, but many of the songs in the play are really in the style of the corrido, which was a style that he used in the 1930s. It's a popular form of music in Mexico. And he actually became a target by the government, and he was actually accused of crimes, including a crime of rape. And then after he was sentenced to 50 years in jail, the young woman came forward and told the public that she had been forced to lie about him. And so because she recanted her story, he appealed. It took a few years. He was eventually released from prison. But as soon as he was released from prison, he was deported to Mexico. And it took him a few decades to even come back. But his story is a really important story, because I feel like he was trying to tell the truth at the time, and Elisa is telling the truth. She is also wanting us to understand what's happening, and so she takes a lot of inspiration from him.
Very good. Son las 8:26 de la noche. Está usted en sintonía de Tertulia. Soy Raquel Obregón, con ustedes hasta las 10 de la noche, conversando con mi invitada en la noche de hoy, Priscilla María Page. 26 minutes past 8, you are in tune to Tertulia. I am Raquel with you until 10 tonight, and my guest is Priscilla María Page. We were talking about corridos, and that means music. Tell me about the music. How many musicians do you have in this play?
It's really exciting. the musical director and the sort of the co-composer. He wrote songs to Elisa's lyrics. His name is Moises Vasquez. He's the band leader. And then we will have a local musician, Lucas Solorzano, and he is actually a member of the band. Some people may know Bella's Bartok. He's be playing bass in our band for this production. And another local musician who's fabulous, Julissa Rodriguez, will be playing cajon. And they will be joined by Elena Lyles, and she is also a local musician, and she's the lead vocalist in the band. In addition to that, there are 3 students who are ensemble members, and so they sing and perform alongside Elisa. And Elisa, they are the ensemble, the corridistas, and Elisa is sort of the lead member of the ensemble, and she performs monologues and songs and is sort of the lead corridista of the play. So it's very exciting.
This sounds like a lot of fun, Priscilla. And when is this play coming up? Soon?
It's coming up very soon, and the dates will be April 7th, 8th, and 9th, and that will be at 7:30 p.m., and on the 9th, we will also have a matinee performance at 2 p.m. So there will be 4 opportunities to see the play at UMass in the Bromery Arts Center, which is where the main concert hall is. And this play will take place in the Rand Theater at UMass.
So it's 3 days, did you say?
There are 3 days, April 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Okay, and if anybody wants to get information about tickets or maybe about the play, is there by any chance a web page that they can visit?
Yes, they can go to umass.edu/theater, THEATER, and we have a tab for performances on that page, and that will take you to more information about the play, and then you can also get the link from there to purchase tickets.
Very well. Is there anything else that you would like to add? Have we missed anything?
Well, the other thing that's really exciting is that this is really an East Coast, West Coast collaboration. So it's a co-production with Breath of Fire Latina Theater Ensemble, and the play's director, Sara Guerrero, is the artistic director of her company in Santana, California. They're flying out from Los Angeles tonight, and they will be with us starting tomorrow. She and Moises Vasquez are both based in Southern California, and so they'll be with us. They've been working with the performers over Zoom. We've had rehearsals over Zoom for the past 2 weeks, and they'll be in person and in residence, and so it'll be really wonderful to host them. They're both very talented artists in their own right, and it's exciting to have guests who are, we were talking about this, to have an entirely Mexican American Chicana team, creative team that's working on this play. So we're thrilled to be collaborating with them, and just really excited about the play.
So, and that is up your alley. You are Chicana also.
Yes, exactly.
It's been so much fun, and I know that the play is going to be wonderful and so much fun with the music as well, with the corridos. And we invite everybody to come to this play and remember the name. It's Olvidados, a Mexican American Corrido. Priscilla, thank you so very much. It's been a pleasure to have you as a guest and to see you after such a long time.
It's been too long, and thank you so much, Raquel.
And before we go, thank you. But before we go, I would like to close by listening to this song that is called, what did we say? It's called Corrido Villista. Do you know this song?
I do know this song, and I learned about this song through my research for the play. So this is a really wonderful CD that's really archival recordings of Pedro J. Gonzalez, and this particular song is in the corrido style, which is really a story song, and it's like a 200-year-old tradition. And this one is a song that's telling us about a soldier who is fighting alongside Pancho Villa in the Mexican Revolution.
Very well. Thank you so much.